Kind of crazy. I mean, to be attached to something for that long, and then to see it made sort of on a fast track was odd. I mean, I was pushing that thing for 11 years and to no avail, and then we shot a little bit of test footage that sat on the shelf for a couple more years. The studio didn't have any interest in making the movie, and then that test footage unfortunately leaked onto the internet, and which was really and we're looking into that right now still. And then it was the internet. It was the fans of the IP of Deadpool that got that movie made. So next thing you know, we were standing on a film set, and that was like a dream come true for us. So our expectations were literally nothing, and they went. It was like just went through the roof immediately. So by the time we were shooting Deadpool 1, we had actually already started cracking the story on Deadpool 2, but not because we had the audacity to think that we would be able to shoot a Deadpool 2, because we had no idea at the time that Deadpool 1 would do so well. We just love Deadpool. I mean, myself, Rhett Reese, Paul Wernick, each of us have been working together for almost a decade now, and we're sort of like brothers. And we were just cracking Deadpool stories just for fun. And then, of course, the movie just blew up, the first one, and then we got to make this story, and we really wanted to tell a family film. We wanted Deadpool 2 to be a family film, with a few fucks and shits thrown in for good measure, because kids need to grow up fast.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Ryan and Dave, I think, did a good job of is also sort of setting the example of, like, playing around is okay, and I think that is always very important to sort of have that trickle down effect, and it was a super supportive environment, and I think it allowed us all to kind of like relax and just have a good time. So I mean, I did obviously. I wanted to do the best that I could, and I gave myself that pressure, but I think all of us working together, we all just wanted to make the best that we could, and if I was lacking of a joke, Ryan would provide.
Huh.
For all of us.
For all of us, yeah. Hallo, ich bin hier in Berlin geboren, meine Großeltern kommen später. Ja, die wohnen ja jetzt 10 Minuten weg in Lichtenberg. Ich habe heute Morgen mit denen fix gesprochen. Aber ja.
You studied really hard for this press conference. Wow.
4 years of German went a long way.
Yeah, really did. My goodness.
I was a huge fan of the first movie. I thought it was really unique, really irreverent, really inappropriate, and I like inappropriate a lot. Never imagining myself. I know that there was a short list, I think, for the last year, a year and a half. I was never on that short list. I never heard about the short list. So I didn't really know that Deadpool 2 was happening. And then they called me over a weekend. And I immediately started to rebel and become reticent. And my wife very sweetly said, "Why don't you just shut up and read the script?" And I did. And I laughed for an hour and a half straight. And within 4 hours said, "I'm in." And I was also a bit of a fan of this guy over here.
What? I would say that there's a little bit more humanity in this one, largely in part, because we're not burdened with this an origin story. We can actually the audience is familiar with Deadpool. We don't have to set up the world and deliver exposition in ways that you would normally have to do for movies like this. So we have the breathing room to just let Deadpool kind of hit the ground running and have some fun, and also the breathing room to introduce 2 of these incredible new characters to that world. So Deadpool's always tried to stick to canon. And in the comics, there's a long, pretty rich history of Deadpool in the comics, and he's always protected kids. He's always had a soft spot for kids. Deadpool doesn't give a shit about saving the world, but his goals are always myopic and kind of, he's impetuous and he's impatient and he's dysfunctional. He's an idiot, but the one thing he does have is a warm heart under all of that. So I loved the idea of this story sort of revolving in part around both loss and then finding your place in the world. The idea that one act of kindness can change the world. The idea that, Deadpool's real journey is to do something selfless. And for him, that's that's really hard to do. And I think that's one of the things I love about this world is that Deadpool's not a virtuous character. He's not a character that's like Superman or Captain America or something like that. He's a bit of a douchebag. And it gives us somewhere to go in these films. It really gives us some place to sort of play, because I think it's more interesting to see somebody that's an imperfect person wanting to be a little bit better than they were yesterday, as opposed to just starting as a perfect person and there's nowhere to go. So that journey's been a lot of fun. Josh, you been skydiving?
I have. I've been skydiving a
Yeah?
lot. Yeah, you already knew that. You didn't even have to ask me that. I
know.
just look like the
Just trying to
skydiving
help him
type.
out.
Josh, why don't you chime in?
Yeah.
I do, but I would love to skydive with Peter. I didn't have the opportunity to skydive with Peter. And Peter's
our
my
favorite
favorite
character.
character.
Yeah,
We love him.
I'd say me too.
I have gone skydiving before. I did 13 jumps when I was 18. On my 13th jump, my chute failed. So I pulled a reserve chute. I got on the ground, burned my pants that I had soiled, and never did it again. And I remember the instructor said, "You got to get back up there. You got to get back up there right now, otherwise you'll never go again." And I went, "Exactly, fuckface. Never again. Ever." That plane was perfectly fine, and I left it. So yeah, no more skydiving for me. That was the last time I ever went. Yeah.
Ryan's really fucking funny, if you can't tell. But I mean, Josh, Cable's pretty moody, so I don't know what that was like for you. I mean, for me too, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it was, you know, if people did break, we would just sort of do another take again. But it was also, I think it was just sort of a part of the whole thing to kind of just like run through and try to make it through a scene.
It was more charming than anything. You know, when you do comedy, there's you think when you watch it, which is appropriate, of like, you guys must have had the best time ever. Let's see it again. Let's pay more money to, you know, imagine that again and again. And, you know, I've done a few comedies, Flirting with Disaster a long time ago with David O. Russell. There was Lily Tomlin and Alan Alda and Mary Tyler Moore, and I've never been on such a serious set in my life, and people trying to figure out the better joke and trying to one-up one another and all that. I think the group settings with T.J. Miller and you know, all of us together, that was the most fun for them, not for me, because I was really nervous. You're trying to figure out whether you're funny or not, where you fit in the whole thing, but you know, Ryan's constantly coming up with other lines, and like Zazie said in the beginning, when you're lost, you lean on Ryan. What should I say? What would Cable say? You know, and Ryan's like, why don't you try this? And you're like, oh, that works.
Which is crazy, because you're thinking, I mean, you were like writing for yourself and for everyone else while
Yeah.
just
I'm
doing
merely a vessel.
everything.
Really. I mean, it's like we said, it's a group effort. It's myself, it's Rhett Reese, Paul Wernick. You know, what you may not see is that we're Rhett, Paul, and I kind of huddle up, and we're, you know, we love alts. You know, we love all alt jokes and those kinds of things for the movie. So it makes for great entertainment, I think, in the home entertainment package for these kind of movies, because you get to see all the different jokes. But oftentimes I'll write, you know, 8 to 10 jokes to replace one joke, and we'll just try them all. And it's always fun to sort of share. I love Domino, and I love Cable. I absolutely love, eat and breathe these characters too. So it's fun to work on all that stuff. I mean, you know, Dave Leitch is just so great at not only accommodating that, but making sure that that certainly I don't run and leap into an empty swimming pool filled with broken glass, which I have a tendency to do, because you can go too far with stuff, or you can push it too far. And Dave is very good at sort of seeing the macro, where I'll sort of focus on the micro in these moments.
But Josh is also right with, I think, like, comedy is very meticulous. Like, you have to hit a beat, and it has a rhythm, and you have to do that visually and, you know, with the tone and vocally. And so it can become sort of like a puzzling of tones and a puzzling of beats.
The stories are more interesting. They're more human. You know, I love this idea that back in the day, tentpole movies were kind of seen as B movies almost, or a lot of cheese. and no real heart and story. And I think Marvel was the kind of beginning, Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige was the beginning of like saying, well, why can't Mark Ruffalo play this? And why can't, so they started pulling in kind of a different echelon of actors, and the movies started to, I think the writers reacted to that, you know, and audiences reacted to that. You know, they started to really lend themselves to the stories more than just bells and whistles. People started to, you underestimate the audience, and you think they want to see one thing, but really they want to be able to care. And I think with Marvel, you know, and these types of movies, even though this is totally inappropriate and funny, you do care. Like when I saw the movie for the first time, I was like, you know, and I care about Ryan's character and that he's searching for his heart and he wants to get back to his girl, and you know what I mean?
I actually don't agree with, I think, superhero movies necessarily being better than art house movies nowadays. I think superhero movies have, like how you two were saying, just transformed and just deepened in character. I think TV is changing that way too. At least in the United States, TV is becoming much more detailed and just much more human and real, and getting rid of the laugh track. And I think it kind of, you know, with this social media sort of generation and YouTube, people are kind of like wanting more like intimate, real experiences in a way. I think, you know, so I think superhero movies are following suit in that and becoming more interesting. But I think art house is still pretty good.
I don't know anything about luck because it's not really superpower, but I do know that that, you know, the hard work thing is it. I mean, you know, certainly luck plays a part, but that's just going to get you a tiny bit of the way there. You gotta, you know, I have found that, you know, in this industry is pretty. I notice this is kind of common. You really got to make your own stuff, or you got to put your fingerprint on stuff in order to like really feel not just creatively satisfied, but, you know, for I think audiences want authentic connections, and, you know, when they see characters that, or actors that are in love with their job or love playing a character, I think it translates through the screen. So, you know, and that's part of that's hard work, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think when like Ryan's saying that I mean, it's gone from 8 years to 11 years during this tour, but I think it's 11 years that you were pushing this movie to get done, and having done Green Lantern.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
I think luck has something to do with it. But then again, if you look at the amount of work that he's put in and the fact that nobody wanted to do this movie forever, and that he had the confidence and the wherewithal and the persistence until somebody finally said, okay, I think speaks a lot to, you know, how difficult it can be. And on your ego, too, of like, no thanks. Thanks for coming in. You know, the door's right there kind of thing. And then you just keep doing it and keep doing it. You know, for me, I've been doing it for 34 years. I did The Goonies, and then I was in the desert for 20 years. And just a working actor, and fine with being a working actor. And then a movie comes along and people say, well, what changed? You know, how did you go from doing C- movies to A movies? And I was like, they were C-, really? I thought I did well. Yeah. I thought it's the same acting to me. It was just better filmmaking, and it's a different reaction from audiences. So you don't know. You don't know how much luck, hard work, but it's definitely a rough go, you know. If you're in it long enough, that's inevitable, you know.